The first time Luke saw the lantern, he thought it was a reflection, a trick of water and dusk. It floated just above the lake's edge, across the silent stretch of Douglas Lake in eastern Tennessee, where the pines grew thick and the air settled heavy at night. It swayed gentle and slow, like someone carrying it down a path he couldn't see. Luke had just finished unpacking, standing on the cabin's front porch with a beer in one hand and a worn paperback in the other. The sun had barely dipped below the tree line, and the lake had turned the color of cooling ash. He squinted toward the light. It was small, distant, and steady, too steady to be a firefly. He watched it for a long time, waiting for a boat, a shadow, a figure. Nothing moved. The lantern swayed once more and disappeared behind a bend. The following night, it came back. Same time, same place. Still no figure holding it, just the faint amber glow swinging calmly in the dark like it had all the time in the world. By the third night, Luke couldn't pretend it wasn't real, and by the fourth, it was at his dock. Not across the lake, not distant, not explainable, just 10 feet from his porch, floating in place. No wind, no ripples in the water, just a silent presence glowing in the black. He didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe him? A man, newly divorced, retreating to the mountains to find himself after burning down his marriage, claiming to see ghost lights on the water. Even his therapist would scribble something about grief delusions in her notebook and nod sympathetically. But the thing is, Luke wasn't grieving. He was relieved. Until the lantern came. It didn't just appear, it waited. The night it reached his dock, Luke stayed inside. He watched from behind the screened porch, his breath barely audible, heart tapping against his ribs. The lantern hovered for exactly 9 minutes and then drifted away. Backward, not turning, just retreating, like a video in reverse. The next morning, he walked to the dock and found a single, wet footprint. Barefoot. Small. He hadn't had visitors. He hadn't told a soul he was here. The cabin wasn't even listed on Google Maps. It had belonged to his grandfather, passed down to his father, and now to him, tucked in the forgotten forests where cell signals vanish and even birds fall silent by twilight. On the 5th night, the knocking began. 3 taps on the porch railing, then silence. He flinched, waited, held his breath. 5 minutes later, 3 taps again. Same rhythm, same spot. But no one was there, just darkness pressing against the windows. By now, Luke had locked all the doors, covered the windows, and placed a knife under his pillow, even though he knew none of that mattered. The fear wasn't coming through the doors. It was already inside. The dreams started that night. Violent, vivid, and sickening. He was drowning, but not in water. Drowning in pine needles, in soft earth. Voices whispered beneath the soil. One of them sounded like his mother, another like his ex-wife, Casey, her voice hoarse from crying, and one voice, sharp, clear, childlike, asked, "Do you remember me yet?" He woke in sweat, clutching the knife with trembling hands. The cabin smelled of damp wood and something sweeter, rot sweet, like fruit gone bad. He wasn't alone anymore. Before we go any deeper, if you're still here, still reading, still breathing, take a second and subscribe to the channel. That's what keeps stories like this alive. If you want to know what happened to Luke and to the others, support us. You'll want to see how this ends. And trust me, it does not end how you expect. Luke drove into town the next day, not for supplies, not for cell service, but for answers. He stopped at a dusty old gas station just off the main road, the kind that still had mechanical pumps and a bell that rang when you pulled in. The woman behind the counter looked like she had been carved out of oak. Long white braids, sharp eyes, fingers stained with tobacco. Her name tag read, Marnie. "You from up the lake?" she asked as he placed a bottle of water and beef jerky on the counter. Luke nodded. "Family place." She eyed him. "Which side?" He hesitated. North Shore. She paused. And you been seeing the light then? Luke's spine straightened. What? She leaned in. Lantern. Shows up round dusk. Stays quiet. Don't move unless it wants to. You seen it. He swallowed hard. What is it? Marnie didn't blink. Company. The kind that don't knock twice, Luke pressed. A ghost? No, she said plainly. Ghosts want something. This don't. This remembers he didn't understand. She slid his items across and lowered her voice. You ever hear a story about the Ferris girl? Luke shook his head. Round 30 years back, summer of '92. Little girl went missing up that way. Family had a cabin near yours. They said she wandered off. Search parties, helicopters, dogs. Nothing. Vanished. Luke felt his throat tighten. They found her bike, found her shoes, but no body. Some said she got swept into the lake. Others said she was taken. No one agrees on what happened, but Marnie's gaze locked with his. Every now and then, someone new comes up that way, someone who ain't never been before, and they start seeing things. Lanterns, lights, bare footprints in the mud. She leaned closer. Don't follow it, don't speak to it, and whatever you do, don't let it in. Back at the cabin, Luke opened his laptop and searched for missing persons. Ferris, Tennessee, 1992. There was one hit, a Harper Ferris, age 9, missing since July 18th. Last seen riding her bike near the lake trail. Declared legally dead in 2001. Case still open. No leads. He stared at the photo. She had big eyes, a gap-toothed smile, hair in 2 messy braids. She was wearing a Camp Appalachia t-shirt, the same one he'd found under the floorboards 2 days ago when cleaning out the kitchen crawl space. He hadn't thought much of it then. Now he couldn't stop staring at it. The smell of rot was stronger that night. Luke lit candles, opened all the windows. The air didn't help. At 9:12 p.m., the lantern appeared again. Not on the dock this time, in the woods, moving closer. He grabbed the flashlight, the knife, and, against all common sense, stepped off the porch. The ground crunched underfoot. Leaves, pine cones, dry bark. The lantern floated 20 yards ahead, moving slowly, swaying side to side, like a pendulum. He followed, drawn by something he couldn't name. Not curiosity, not fear, a strange, bone-deep familiarity. He walked for nearly 20 minutes before the forest opened into a clearing. Moonlight spilled across an old stone fire pit, rusted lawn chairs, a broken swing set wrapped in vines, and the lantern hovering above a wooden box like a child's toy chest, carved with initials. H.F. Luke stepped forward. The lantern flared, then vanished. The clearing dropped into black silence. He heard it before he saw it, the voice. Luke. Soft, young, female. He turned slowly. Standing 10 feet away, at the edge of the trees, was a little girl in braids. She wore no shoes. Her feet were muddy. Her eyes were wide and hollow. "You forgot me," she said. "I don't—" "Yes, you do." He stepped back. His foot caught on something, the edge of the toy box. It creaked open. Inside were photos, dozens, of Luke as a child, laughing, running, playing with a girl in braids, throwing rocks into the lake, sitting by a fire pit. He didn't remember these, not clearly, but the girl was always there, smiling. "You said you'd come back," she whispered. Luke dropped the flashlight. "No, this isn't real. I never—" "You left me." A scream pierced the woods, but it wasn't hers. It was his, as a child, from somewhere in the dark. Luke turned and ran. The forest blurred, spun. The trees bent the wrong way. Branches scratched his arms like claws. He stumbled into the cabin, slammed the door, locked it, bolted it. Then he looked at the wall. Dozens of photographs, freshly pinned. All of him, all from today. Every step he took into the woods, every breath, every angle. and one photo in the center, Luke, asleep, in bed, taken from inside the cabin. He hadn't taken it. He hadn't even gone to sleep yet. He backed away slowly, hand trembling toward the drawer with the knife. Then he heard the knock. 3 taps. On the inside of the bedroom door. Luke never came back to town, but 2 weeks later a park ranger doing a fire line check found his cabin empty. The doors were locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. His car still there. His clothes folded neatly, knife on the table. The only thing missing was Luke, and taped to the wall above the bed, a single photo of a girl in braids holding a lantern, standing at the edge of Douglas Lake, smiling, just waiting. The fog didn't roll in. It rose, slow and stubborn from the soil, like it had been sleeping there for years, waiting for someone to trespass. Caleb Porter knew he'd gone off trail. He just didn't care, not at first. The Roan Highlands had always pulled him like gravity. Quiet, isolated. He'd served 3 tours overseas, seen death in places where silence never came, but here, among the green waves of North Carolina's eastern spine, he could finally hear himself think. Or, that's what he thought. Until the compass stopped working. It hadn't spun erratically. That would have been expected. This was worse. It twitched, like it was struggling against something unseen, jerking like a wounded animal every time he tried to follow true north. He'd gone out alone. Standard military survival pack, satellite beacon, secondary compass, emergency rations, no shortcuts, no pride in the mission. Just a man trying to prove to himself he could still function without orders. That morning had been clean. Blue skies, crisp trailhead markers, a plan. But halfway up the ridge, something shifted. The same dead tree, twice. He was sure of it. A snapped birch, white bark scarred with 3 diagonal gashes. Then he saw it again. And again. A loop. Caleb wasn't the type to panic, but training didn't account for trails that moved beneath your feet. He dropped his pack, pulled the compass, still twitching, sat down on a flat rock, unzipped his side holster, just in case. Sweat ran cold down his neck. The fog rose thicker now, ankle deep, then knee-high, then thigh level. It rolled against the undergrowth without touching it, like it was searching for something. He tried his radio. Static. He tried the beacon. No green light. Then the birds stopped. He hadn't noticed their absence until now. No wings above the tree line, no chirping, just stillness and the sound of something heavy breathing, not his. Caleb turned slowly, scanning the ridge. That's when he saw the footprints, his own, dozens of them, circling him in a widening spiral. No other tracks, no signs of disturbance, just his. And they were facing the wrong way. All the toes pointed toward him. He stood, gun drawn, heart rate spiking. He'd been trained to follow trail patterns, to identify threat signatures. He knew the rhythm of a hunter. This wasn't hunting. This was ritual. Natalie Reyes hadn't expected inspiration to come with a side of dread. When she applied for the Appalachian Creative Grant, it had sounded like a godsend. 1 month in a private yurt outside Hocking Hills, Ohio. Forest solitude, no social media, no deadlines, no distractions. A perfect space to work on her sculpture portfolio, to rebuild after what she called the collapse, a breakup, a canceled exhibit, and a miscarriage in the span of 6 months. No one told her about the silence. Real silence, the kind that seeped under the skin and rearranged how you breathed. By the 3rd day, Natalie had begun sketching again, first with charcoal, then pen. She didn't remember choosing the images, just that her hands moved faster than her thoughts. She drew faces over and over. One face, a man with long limbs and no eyes, always standing in the same position, just outside the window of the yurt, mouth slightly open, head tilted. But when she went outside, nothing. At first, she rationalized. Old trauma, dream residue, creative overdrive. The brain made things up to process pain. Every artist knew that. But then the drawings started appearing in her sketchbook overnight. Pages she hadn't touched, images she didn't draw. She tried burning one. The ashes formed the same shape in the dirt. Natalie began hearing things just before sleep. Not voices, just movement. The soft scrape of something dragging a stick in a circle. A loop, like someone was writing around her. She stopped drawing. That night she woke to her own voice, calling her name, not from the outside, from the back of the yurt, behind the thin canvas wall. Back on the ridge, Caleb was moving again. He pushed uphill, past the gnarled roots, past the third loop of his own footprints. He marked a tree with his blade, an old military habit. The fog pulsed with every step. He reached a bend where the trees split into two narrow paths. He chose the one on the left. 20 minutes later, he was standing in the same bend, looking at his own tree mark. He spat, swore, wiped sweat from his brow. Then he saw the tent. It was too new to be old, too clean to be forgotten, nestled between two boulders like it had grown there. No fire pit, no tracks, no footprints. He approached slowly, gun raised. The flap was half-zipped. He pulled it open. Empty. No sleeping bag, no gear, just a journal on the ground. He flipped through it. Blank, all except for the last page, written in heavy black ink. You are walking someone else's path. He dropped the book. The fog recoiled, then rushed toward him. Natalie began documenting everything. She couldn't explain why. The same instinct that made her draw also told her to record. She set up an audio device by the yurt door, another inside near the bed. She didn't play them back right away. She was too scared. On the 6th morning, she went for a hike, trying to clear her mind. She made it halfway down the trail when she saw a stone circle. Not large, not obvious, but deliberate. Flat stones stacked into a spiral, small bones in the center, a carving in the bark of a nearby tree. He stands where regret grows. Natalie snapped a photo. When she checked her camera roll, the image was there, but behind the circle, standing in the shadows, was a shape. Tall, leaning, watching. She hadn't seen it in real life. She threw up in the brush, ran back, slammed the yurt door, played the audio recording. Nothing. Then a faint voice distorted. Let me out of you. She stared at the screen, and then every light in the yurt flickered off. The Caleb didn't remember running. He only remembered falling. His knee hit rock. His shoulder cracked against a root. He tasted blood. When he looked up, he saw a figure on the ridge, not moving, just standing, no face, no outline, just a silhouette of heat in the fog. He raised the gun. It didn't move. He fired once. The sound disappeared, swallowed, no echo. Then the figure mimicked him, lifting a dark object to its shoulder, holding it the same way. But it wasn't a gun. It was a mirror. Caleb saw himself, bleeding, afraid, alone. Then the figure vanished. The fog collapsed around him like a wave. He screamed, but the air swallowed it whole. Natalie didn't sleep that night. At 3:11 a.m., she saw the man from her sketches, real now, standing 20 feet away, half his body hidden behind a pine, not moving, not breathing, watching. She turned off all lights, sat in the dark, camera in hand. But every time she took a photo, he was closer. In the 5th image, he was at the window. In the 6th, just inside the door. In the 7th, she saw nothing. She turned on the lights. The yurt was empty, but her sketchbook had a new page. The man, standing above her bed, hands outstretched. Inside each palm was an ear, hers. She screamed until her throat went raw. Then silence returned. At sunrise, Caleb found a new trail. It wasn't real. He knew it wasn't. The dirt was too smooth, the leaves too still, the trees too perfect, but it was forward. He walked. An hour later, he saw a structure ahead, a yurt. He almost didn't believe it. He called out, "Hello." A woman's voice answered, from inside, shaking. "Don't come in." He approached slowly. "It's okay. I'm lost. I'm just looking for a way out." "You can't help me," she said. Then silence. Caleb stood outside the yurt for a long time, listening. His compass began to spin again, wildly, then stopped, pointing backward behind him. He turned and saw his own body hanging upside down from a tree, mouth open, eyes gone, skin carved with words. "You found me too late." He turned back toward the yurt. It was gone. So was the clearing, so was the trail, just fog and pine, and the sound of something circling him, dragging a stick in a slow, deliberate loop. Natalie awoke in daylight. She was still in the yurt, but everything felt duller, the colors, the air. She walked outside, no fog, no man, just trees, and a journal on her doorstep. It wasn't hers. It was military issue. Inside, pages filled with loops and circles, footprints, coordinates. The last page, "She's the only one who saw both of us." Natalie looked around, called out. No answer. She picked up the journal and began to walk. She didn't know where, just forward, toward whatever waited beneath the fog line. The first time Marcus heard his own voice whispering from the trees, he thought it was the wind. He was used to editing footage for hours, hearing the same line over and over until it blurred into noise. But here, out in Shenandoah National Park, the woods didn't echo like speakers. They whispered like breath. It was day 3 of his self-imposed no-cell signal challenge. A week alone on the Appalachian Trail, documenting everything: hikes, meals, solitude, psychological effects. For subscribers, for clicks, but also for himself. He wanted to prove he could go a week without depending on his digital identity. The challenge was simple. Until his GoPro filmed him while he slept. Marcus had set it on a rock, facing his tent as part of a time-lapse experiment. He didn't expect it to record anything but stars. When he played it back that morning, he saw something else. At 3:16 a.m., the camera jerked violently, as if someone picked it up and turned it toward the forest. A shape passed in front of the lens, a human silhouette, no detail, just tall, thin, deliberate. Then a voice, his voice, clear, calm, whispering, "Don't wake up yet. He's still watching you." Marcus paused the video, rewound, listened again. It wasn't dubbed in post. It was real. He didn't remember saying it, and the he it referred to, Marcus didn't want to ask. He didn't sleep the next night. He left the camera off, kept the fire burning, sat with his back to a rock wall, knife in hand. But the voice came anyway, not through the trees, through his phone, which had been powered off. The screen flashed once, then glitched, then played back audio from a recording he'd posted months ago, a video essay titled, "Who Are You When You're Alone?" But the words had changed. Now it said, "You are watching yourself sleep because someone else already did." He dropped the phone, left it on the ground. But the whisper followed him for miles, like the forest had memorized his content, and was now remixing it into warnings. He almost left, almost, but his pride kept him there. And that night, the whispers stopped. Instead, they sang. Ava Hollins had never planned to return to Fontana Dam, not since Harold passed. It had been their spot. Every year on their anniversary, they'd hike the Lakeshore Trail, camp near the old drowned village that locals said was cursed. Ava never believed in curses. Not then. Now? She wasn't so sure. She was 55 now, retired after 3 decades of teaching. Her house in Knoxville had become too quiet, too still. She needed motion, closure, So she drove west with her husband's ashes in the glove box and her wedding ring on a chain around her neck. She hiked alone, slow but steady. The dam still looked like something carved out of a myth, enormous, silent, holding back more than just water. That night, she camped near the abandoned trail marker for Judson, the ghost town submerged beneath Fontana Lake. Locals said you could still hear the church bells underwater if the moon was right. At 2 a.m., Ava awoke to a child's laughter, faint, bubbling up from the lake like air rising from a drowned lung. She froze in her tent, heart pounding. It wasn't the laugh that frightened her. It was what came next, the voice of her husband, young, clear, echoing like it had when he was 10 years old. "Ava, are you coming?" Her breath caught. He had said that once when they first met as children at summer camp, a moment they had always cherished. But Harold was dead, and this wasn't his voice. It was too perfect, too rehearsed. The next morning she found tiny footprints in the mud around her tent, barefoot, child-sized, but no child had come through the trail in days. She packed to leave, but something, grief, maybe, kept her there. Marcus uploaded a 3-minute vlog the next day, standing at an overlook beneath a thick canopy of fog. He titled it, "Something's Wrong on the Trail." Day 5. He didn't script it, just looked into the lens and said, "I don't know who's watching this, but I don't think I'm alone out here anymore. Not in a bears or people way. I mean, like, I think the woods are copying me, recording me. Not digitally, like actually mirroring me." He stopped. He looked behind him, then back to the lens. "If you hear my voice and I'm not talking, don't trust it." The video uploaded silently via a satellite hotspot. He never watched it again, but the comments flooded in. "Who was that behind you at 1:13? Why did your reflection blink out of sync? There's a second whisper track under your voice." He deleted the app, but his mind kept replaying it. He stopped filming entirely that night. And that's when the trail signs began changing. First, they pointed to places he'd already been, then to places that didn't exist. Then they said nothing, just his name, etched into the wood, burned, not carved. Ava stayed one more night. She scattered Harold's ashes near the old trailhead, whispered goodbye, and cried like she hadn't in years. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat beside the fire, waited. At 1:22 a.m., the lake began to sing, not music, voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, layered, cascading, all repeating the same word, remember, then silence, then a splash, like someone jumping in, then footsteps, small and fast, circling her tent. She opened the flap slowly. A child stood there, soaking wet, mouth open but no sound, just staring. Ava stared back. The child's face shifted, subtle at first, then clear. It was her husband, as a boy, then as a teen, then as a man, then old, then gone. Just fog. Ava dropped to her knees. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She whispered, "I remember," and the child smiled and vanished. Marcus ran into Ava the next morning. It was pure chance, or fate. He had lost the trail again, his map useless, signs backwards. He heard humming, a low, gentle hum. He followed it, found her sitting at the edge of a stream, eyes closed, smiling faintly. "You okay?" he asked. She opened her eyes. "You're being followed," she said softly. Marcus stiffened. "By what?" Not what. Who. He looked around. No one's there. Ava didn't answer. She just handed him something, a notebook filled with drawings, symbols, faces, circles, footprints spiraling, and one drawing of him, sleeping. "It watches people who try to change," she said. "It likes the broken ones, the ones trying to put themselves back together." Marcus looked down at the sketch. "I didn't draw this," he whispered. Ava stood. "You didn't have to." Then she walked away, without looking back. That night, Marcus camped in the same spot. He tried to sleep, but his body felt wrong, too heavy, like he was being held down. He opened his eyes and saw himself, standing over his own body, smiling. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. His reflection leaned down, whispered, "Sleep. I'm better at being you." Then everything went black. Ava woke before dawn. She walked back toward the dam. The air shimmered. A low hum followed her. She stopped beside the trailhead where Harold's ashes now rested. She placed her ring on the rock, said nothing. The air responded with silence, and somewhere behind the trees, a voice whispered, "Thank you." She didn't look back. She just walked forward, until the forest let her go. Aaron Bennett hadn't planned to stop hiking. The trip was supposed to be 2 days, a short escape with his sons, Elijah and Thomas, aged 10 and 13. He'd promised them a taste of the outdoors like he had growing up. No phones, no games, just trees, dirt, stories by firelight, and the kind of silence that made you remember who you were before the world got loud. But now it was day 3, and the trail had disappeared. Not overgrown, not washed out, gone, like someone had erased it from beneath their feet and replaced it with endless, looping forest. Aaron had walked this stretch of the Blue Ridge Parkway as a teen. He knew these hills, but the trees here were wrong. Too straight, too still, too familiar, like they'd been copied and pasted around them in perfect, eerie symmetry. Worse, the boys had stopped speaking. They weren't scared, not exactly, just vacant. They stared ahead as they walked, said nothing, answered only in slow, disconnected syllables. Aaron kept telling himself they were tired, that it was dehydration, altitude, but every time he asked Elijah to repeat his name, the boy would smile faintly and say, "I'm here already." That night it rained. They set up a small tarp shelter, huddled close. Aaron tried to use the GPS. No signal, no satellites, nothing but the empty blinking of a device that once guaranteed safety. And then came the house. It appeared like a mirage in the rain, maybe half a mile ahead, nestled between 2 steep ridgelines. It hadn't been there earlier. It shouldn't have been there now. Aaron knew what every parent fears in moments like this. Do I trust what I see, or do I trust what I know? But the boys had already started walking toward it. He ran after them, shouting, heart pounding, instincts at war with logic. The house was 2 stories, white siding, black roof, a wraparound porch with empty rocking chairs. It looked like something out of his childhood, and that's what made it worse. It was out of his childhood. He recognized the weather vane on top, a crooked rooster bent in half, the porch step with the crack in the 3rd plank, the tree stump on the right, where his father had once carved initials with a pocket knife. He hadn't been here in 25 years, and this house, his grandfather's, had burned down when he was 17. Yet here it stood, perfect, restored, waiting. The front door opened by itself. His boys stepped inside. Aaron followed. Inside, the air was warm, too warm, like the breath of something that had been asleep for a very long time. The walls were lined with photographs, photos of his sons, sleeping, playing, laughing, and in every photo, standing just behind them, was Aaron, smiling. But he didn't remember these moments because he'd never been there. The father in the photos wasn't him, but it looked exactly like him. Jenna Tran heard the 4th voice on the 2nd night of her trip. She was parked in Monongahela National Forest, staying in a rented A-frame cabin while working on a limited series podcast called Echoes from the Tree Line. Her goal was to record real Appalachian ghost stories from locals, then layer them with immersive sound design. She had 3 episodes mapped, interviews scheduled, gear set up. But what she hadn't planned for was the voice in her equipment. It first appeared as background noise, soft, layered beneath her own narration. She was editing an interview with a woman named Ruth, who'd told a haunting story about hearing her husband's voice years after his death. Jenna played the tape, paused, rewound, listened again. Ruth's story was intact, but underneath it, clear as if it were being whispered just behind Jenna's shoulder, a voice said, "She doesn't know you're lying." Jenna froze, checked the waveform. The frequency didn't match her mic pattern. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't Ruth. It was something else. And it called her name, soft, playful, and far too familiar. Aaron moved through the house like a ghost in his own life. Upstairs, he found a bedroom identical to the one he'd slept in as a child. On the nightstand was a drawing, crayon yellowed with age. 3 stick figures, 1 adult, 2 children, and behind them, drawn in thick black lines, a tall figure with no face holding a key. Aaron stared at it, then noticed the date written in the corner. Tomorrow's date. Downstairs, he called for his boys. No answer. He searched every room. The kitchen, empty. The cellar, locked. The attic. He hesitated before pulling the string. The ladder unfolded slowly. He climbed. Inside, he found dozens of cardboard boxes, each labeled Bennett Family, 1998 Bennett Family, 2003 Bennett Family, 2011. Inside were VHS tapes, photographs, journals. He opened one box. It contained a video labeled Elijah's First Day of School, 2019. He had never recorded that. He pressed play. The screen showed his son, smiling nervously in a red shirt. The camera panned to Aaron, holding the camera, laughing, kneeling beside his son, saying, "This time, I won't miss a single moment." Aaron dropped the tape. Tears welled in his eyes, because he had missed it, because he'd spent 2 years working overseas while Elijah grew up, because now the forest, or something in it, was offering him a lie so perfect, so beautiful, it almost hurt more than the truth. Jenna reviewed her sound files obsessively. The 4th voice began appearing more often. Sometimes it spoke in riddles. Other times, it just breathed. But one night, as she reviewed a file from her own voice journal, the voice said something different. "You never told them what he did to you." Jenna stared at the screen. No one else knew about her father, not her listeners, not her therapist, no one. And yet the voice did. She pulled her headphones off. Through them, they landed with a sickening crunch. Silence followed, but the voice returned. From the speakers, from the walls, from the air. "Tell them." Or I Will. Jenna's podcast had been about Appalachian hauntings, but now the story was haunting her. And it wasn't just audio anymore. That night she saw someone, or something, standing at the edge of the trees, tall, still, wearing her father's flannel jacket. She hadn't seen that shirt in 10 years. She hadn't kept that shirt, but now it watched her through the glass and whispered, "We're recording now." Aaron descended the stairs in the morning light. The house was silent. He opened the front door. Outside was not the forest. It was his front lawn in Asheville. His sons played on the sidewalk. His wife stood on the porch, smiling. "Where have you been?" she asked. He stepped out, dazed. But when he looked back at the house, it wasn't there. Just trees, fog, and his sons, now silent, now still, now looking up at him with eyes that weren't theirs. Elijah smiled and said, "You can stay." "We don't mind," Aaron screamed. Woke up, back in the forest, alone. His sons were gone. The house was gone. But the photos were still in his backpack. Photos of him. With a family that never existed. Jenna left the cabin that night. She drove until the trees thinned, until the air cleared. She uploaded her final episode from a roadside diner. It wasn't an interview, it was a confession. Her voice cracked as she said it. I started this series to tell ghost stories. But some of us are haunted before the woods ever find us. Some of us carry the voices inside. She paused, then whispered, and now the forest carries mine. She closed her laptop, got back in her car, looked in the rearview mirror, and saw herself smiling. But her mouth hadn't moved. Clingman's dome was burning. Not literally, not yet, but Becca knew the signs. She'd studied wildfires for most of her adult life, earned 2 degrees, and spent every summer manning outposts across the country. But nothing had prepared her for the way the smoke curled against the wind up here, or how the fire line didn't behave like fire at all. It was like it was thinking. Becca Walsh had arrived at the lookout tower 3 days ago, sent ahead of the rest of her research team to assess early-stage drought risks across the Smokies. Her station sat alone above the trees, 20 feet off the forest floor, with a 360-degree view that felt like floating over a forgotten world. By the second day, her satellite phone stopped working. By the third, the fire began to move, without heat. She first saw it at twilight, a line of glowing orange on the western ridge, too narrow to be a burn, too bright to be missed. It twisted, pulsed, and climbed even against the incline, and then it vanished. No smoke, no crackling, no scent of ash. Just a presence, a shape, maybe, and a figure standing inside it, watching. She documented everything, voice notes, sketches, thermal scans, but nothing held. No recording worked, no camera captured it. The only thing that stuck was a name carved into the tower railing, not hers. Luke. She didn't remember carving it, but the way her hands trembled when she touched the letters made her feel like she should. Far to the east, Daniel Reed was 1 year clean. He'd marked it the only way he knew how, quietly and with his feet. Mac's Patch had been his sanctuary once, back when he was still chasing needles and forgiveness. He'd nearly died up here, twice. The last time he'd collapsed in the grass under the stars, crying so hard he forgot how to breathe. Some part of him believed the mountain had saved him, pulled him back from the edge. So now, 1 year later, he returned to say thank you. But the mountain had changed. The grass was still gold, the sky still wide, but the signs were wrong. The trail markers pointed in impossible directions. One said Asheville, 2 miles, but pointed west. Another bore his full name, etched into the wood, burned around the edges. And then he found the journal, lying in the middle of the trail. He picked it up, flipped through the pages. Every entry was in his handwriting, memories, dreams, regrets. The last page read, "If you're reading this, it means you stepped off the trail again." Daniel looked around. No voices, no watchers, just that creeping sense he'd felt a year ago, the feeling that something ancient was beneath the ground, listening and waiting. Back at the tower, Becca dreamt of fire, but not the kind that burns trees, the kind that burns time. In the dream, she stood at the edge of the tower, watching her older self rise from the trees, skin charred, lips sewn shut, eyes like smoldering coals. The woman held a bundle, a child, and whispered Becca's name without ever opening her mouth. She awoke to static. Her radio, long dead, buzzed to life. A single voice, barely a whisper. "You're not the first." Becca stood, heart hammering. The air smelled like ozone, and somewhere below the sound of feet climbing stairs echoed. She grabbed her field axe, waited, but no one came. The steps stopped mid-tower. When she peered down, there was nothing there, just a footprint, bare, small, and wet. Daniel kept walking, even as the fog closed in. He passed symbols carved into trees, circles, spirals, names he didn't recognize, until he reached a clearing with a wooden bench and a mirror nailed to a tree. He hadn't seen a mirror in days. The reflection wasn't right. In it, he was younger, eyes glassy, track marks visible on his arms. Beside him sat his mother weeping. She wasn't really there. She was 10 years gone, but the mirror remembered her, and it remembered what Daniel had said to her the night she died. He smashed the glass with a stone. The forest exhaled. The fog drew back, just a little, and he saw a structure in the distance, a tower. Becca heard the knock again, 3 taps, not on the trapdoor, on the glass of the lookout window. She turned slowly, saw nothing, but a smudge marked the glass, the outline of a hand, small, childlike. She followed it with her fingers and heard a whisper from behind. "Do you remember me yet?" She spun. The room was empty, but the floor had changed, covered in photographs, charred at the edges, all of her, some as a child, some from last week, one from today, her sleeping in the tower bed, the charred figure standing over her. The door burst open. She raised her axe and stopped. Because it wasn't the charred woman, it was Daniel, wild-eyed, breathless. They stared at each other for a long time. Then he said, "I think I've been here before." Becca lowered the axe. "So have I." They sat in silence as the fog circled the tower. Daniel told her about the journal, the mirror, the voice calling him by name. Becca shared the dreams, the fire line that moved like thought, the carved name. She showed him the photo, the one from today. Daniel paled. "I've seen her," he said. Becca looked at him. "In the mirror?" He nodded. "She whispered something to me." "What?" Daniel swallowed. "You're my last chance." The tower began to shake at midnight. No wind, no rain, just pressure, like the forest had taken a deep breath and was holding it. The temperature dropped. Fog crept through the floorboards, up through the cracks in the wall, turning the space into a floating island in a sea of white. And then the tower was gone. Not collapsed, not burned, just elsewhere. Daniel and Becca stood in a forest that was not theirs. The trees were wrong. Branches curved upward, bark black as stone. The ground pulsed beneath their feet. In the distance, voices sang, not English, not human, a song of memory, of reversal. Each step they took echoed backward, like the forest was remembering them as they walked. And then they saw the clearing. 10 people stood there, faces hidden in shadow. But Daniel recognized them, so did Becca. Marcus, Natalie, Ava, Caleb, Jenna, Luke, Elijah, Teresa, even Aaron, all standing, silent, watching, but their eyes told the truth. They were trapped. Echoes of themselves, caught in a loop, not dead, not alive, just remembered too strongly by something that refused to forget. Becca stepped forward. "No more." Her voice cracked. She looked at Daniel. "We leave. We all leave." She reached into her pack, pulled a flare, lit it. The red light sizzled through the fog like blood in water. The watchers hissed, turned their heads, flickered. One by one they vanished, and the fog screamed. The forest pulled itself back, and the clearing collapsed. Daniel grabbed Becca's hand, ran, through the fire line, through the scream, through memory, through guilt, through the voice of his mother, through the voice of her dreams, and into silence. They awoke at sunrise, on Mac's Patch, beside a trail marker that read, "Go forward, do not return." Becca looked at Daniel. "What do we tell people?" He looked at the sky, then at her. "Nothing," then paused. "But we remember." She nodded, and for the first time in days, maybe weeks, the air smelled like morning again.